A Flying Visit. By Thomas Hood. A calendar. A calendar. Look in the almanac. Find out moonshine. Find out moonshine. Midsummer Night's Dream. The bygone September, as folks may remember, at least if their memory saves but an ember, one fine afternoon, there went up a balloon, which did not return to the earth very soon. 2. For, nearing the sky, at about a mile high, the aeronaut bold had resolved on a fly. So cutting his string, in a parasol thing down he came in a field like a lark from the wing. 3. Meanwhile, thus adrift, the balloon made a shift to rise very fast, with no burden to lift. It got very small, then to nothing at all. And then rose the question of where it would fall. Some thought that, for lack of the man and his pack, 'twould rise to the cherub that watches poor Jack. Some held, but in vain, with the first heavy rain, 'twould surely come down to the gardens again. But, still not a word for a month could be heard of what had become of the wonderful bird. The firm Guy and Hughes wore their boots out and shoes, in running about and inquiring for news. Some thought it must be tumbled into the sea. Some thought it had gone off to high Germany for Germans, as shown by their writings. 'Tis known or always delighted with what is high flown. 7. Some hinted a bilk, and that maidens who milk, in far distant shires would be walking in silk. Some swore that it must, as they said at the fust, have gone aga in flashes of lightning and bust. 8. However, at last, when 6 weeks had gone past, intelligence came of a plausible cast. A wandering clown, at a hamlet near town, had seen, like a moon of green cheese, coming down. Soon spread the alarm, and from cottage and farm, the natives buzzed out like the bees when they swarm, and off ran the folk. It is such a good joke to see the descent of a bagful of smoke. And lo, the machine, dappled yellow and green, was plainly enough in the clouds to be seen. Yes, yes, was the cry. It's the old one, surely. Where can it have been such a time in the sky? 11. Lord, where will it fall? It can't find out Vauxhall, without any pilot to guide it at all. Some wagered that Kent would behold the event. Debrett had been posed to predict its descent. 12. Some thought it would pitch in the old Tower ditch. Some swore on the cross of St. Paul's it would hitch. And farmers cried, zounds! If it drops on our grounds, we'll try if balloons can't be put into pounds. 13. But still to and fro it continued to go, as if looking out for soft places below. No difficult job, it had only to bob slap dash down at once on the heads of the mob. 14. Who, too apt to stare at some castle in air, forget that the earth is their proper affair. Till, watching the fall of some soap bubble ball, they tumble themselves with a terrible sprawl. 15. Meanwhile, from its height stooping downward in flight, the phenomenon came more distinctly in sight, still bigger and bigger, and strike me a nigger unfreed, if there was not a live human figure. 16. Yes, plain to be seen, underneath the machine, there dangled a mortal. Some swore it was green. Some mason could spy. Others named Mr. Guy, or Holland, compelled by the Belgians to fly. 17. 'Twas Graham the flighty, whom the Duke high and mighty resigned to take care of his own lignum vitae. 'Twas Hampton, whose whim was in cloudland to swim, till e'en little Hampton looked little to him. 18. But all were at fault. From the heavenly vault the falling balloon came at last to a halt, and bounce. With the jar of descending so far, an outlandish creature was thrown from the car. 19. At first with the jolt all his wits made a bolt, as if he'd been flung by a mettlesome colt. And while in his faint, to avoid all complaint, the muse shall endeavor his portrait to paint. XX. The face of this elf, round as platter of delf, was pale as if only a cast of itself. His head had a rare fleece of silvery hair, just like the albino at Bartlemy Fair. 21. His eyes they were odd, like the eyes of a cod, and gave him the look of a watery god. His nose was a snub, under which, for his grub, was a round open mouth like to that of a chub. 22. His person was small, without figure at all. A plump little body as round as a ball, with 2 little fins, and a couple of pins, with what has been christened a bow in the shins. 23. His dress it was new, a full suit of sky blue, with bright silver buckles in each little shoe, thus painted complete, from his head to his feet. Conceive him laid flat in Squire Hopkins's wheat. 24. Fine text for the crowd, who disputed aloud what sort of a creature had dropped from the cloud. He's come from o'er seas, he's a Cochin Chinese, by Jingo. He's one of the wild Cherokees. 25. Don't nobody know? He's a young Esquimaux, turned white like the hairs by the Arctical snow. Some angel, my dear, sent from some upper spear for Plumtree or Agnew, too good for this here. 26. Meanwhile with a sigh, having opened one eye, the stranger rose up on his seat by and by, and finding his tongue, thus he said, or he sung, Am I crikey bo bigamy kickery bung. 27. Lord, what does he speak? It's dog Latin. It's Greek. It's some sort of slang for to puzzle a beak. It's no like the Scotch, said a Scot on the watch. Fuh. It's nothing at all but a kind of hotch-potch. 28. It's not parley-vous, cried a schoolboy or two, nor Hebrew at all, said a wandering Jew. Some held it was sprung from the Irvingite tongue, the same that is used by a child very young. 29. Some guessed it High Dutch. Others thought it had much in sound of the true hokey-pokey-ish touch, but none could be. Pause. What the dickens? Not Boz. No mortal could tell what the dickens it was. XXX. When who should come pat, in a moment like that, but Bowring, to see what the people were at. A doctor well able, without any fable, to talk and translate all the babble of Babel. 31. So just drawing near, with a vigilant ear, that took every syllable in, very clear, before one could sip up a tumbler of flip, he knew the whole tongue, from the root to the tip. 32. Then stretching his hand, as you see Daniel stand, in the feast of Belshazzar, that picture so grand. Without more delay, in the Hamilton way he Englished whatever the elf had to say. 33. Crack crazy boo ban. I'm the lunatic man, confined in the moon since creation began. Sit muggy big OG, whom except in a fog you see with a lanthorn, a bush, and a dog. 34. Lang Cinery Lear, for this many a year, I've longed to drop in at your own little sphere, och, pad mad Aroon till one fine afternoon, I found that wind coach on the horns of the moon. 35. Cush quackery go, but, besides you must know, I'd heard of a profiting prophet below, Big Botharum Blether, who pretended to gather the tricks that the moon meant to play with the weather. 36. So Christmas and Crash being shortish of cash, I thought I'd a right to partake of the hash, slick mizzle and smack, so I'm come with a pack, to sell to the trade, of my own almanac. 37. Fizz bobbery per shawl besides Ames commercial, much wishing to honor my friend Sir John Herschel, cum puddin' and tame, it's inscribed to his name, which is now at the full in celestial fame. 38. Wept and wish wept, pray this copy accept. But here on the stranger some kidnappers leapt. For why a shrewd man had devised a sly plan the wonder to grab for a show caravan. 39. So plotted, so done, with a fight as in fun, while mock pugilistical rounds were begun, a knave who could box, and give right and left knocks, caught hold of the prize by his silvery locks. XL. And hard he had fared, but the people were scared by what the interpreter roundly declared. You ignorant Turks! You will be your own Burks. He holds all the keys of the lunary works. Xli. You'd best let him go. If you keep him below, the moon will not change, and the tides will not flow. He left her at full, and with such a long pull, zounds! Every man Jack will run mad. Like a bull. Xli. So awful a threat took effect on the set. The fright, though, was more than their guest could forget. So taking a jump, in the car he came plump, and threw all the ballast right out in a lump. XLIII. Up soared the machine, with its yellow and green, but still the pale face of the creature was seen, who cried from the car, "Damn inhuman bygar! That is, what a sad set of villains you are. X live." Howbeit, at some height, he threw down quite a flight of almanacs, wishing to set us all right, and, thanks to the boon, we shall see very soon if Murphy knows most, or the man in the moon.